Hello, everybody. You're listening to the Avanti Wellness Podcast, hosted by me, Lydia Smith, aka Butterflydia. I'm embarking on my own transformational journey, and my intention is to inspire, inform, and support you all along the way. My hope is that we are all learning something new with each episode. So let's meet today's guest. Hi, everyone. It's Lydia with the Avanti Wellness Podcast and YouTube channel. And I'm so excited to have our guest here today. I'm sitting here with Suzanne Harrill. Hi, Suzanne.
Hi.
How's it going?
Oh, it's a good day.
It is a good day. And it all starts right here, doesn't it?
Yeah, really.
Whether it's a good day or not, it's always a good day. So I'm so excited to introduce y'all to Suzanne. She's the author of Wake Up, Your Body is Telling You Something, How to Grow and Evolve from Health Challenges and Life-Altering Circumstances. And let me give y'all just a quick little background. I always like to share kind of how I meet someone or if I don't know them. About, was it 3 weeks ago, maybe? How long ago was that I met you at
I
your...
think it was 1 week ago.
Oh, well, really? No, because I had to read the book 2 weeks ago. Let's meet in the middle. I read the book, so I know it wasn't last week.
Okay.
So probably about 2 weeks ago, I was invited to go to a little women's group at a bookstore at my church. And I didn't even know what the topic was, I don't think. And I just said yes to going. And Suzanne was the presenter and the speaker, and she led us through an experience that was, really great. I enjoyed the connection and all that we had, so much so that I bought the book in order to go home and get more. And I read the book and I love the book, and we're going to talk about the book today. But before we dive into why the book is so magnificent, I'm going to allow Suzanne to introduce herself so y'all can get to know her a little better. Suzanne, would you like to share?
Sure. Thank you for inviting me. This is very exciting that someone loves what I just created. I am a mother. I've got 3 wonderful daughters, 6 grandkids. I have been married for 56 years, believe it or not.
Woohoo! Celebrate.
Yeah. And I became a therapist years ago, and I became more of a teacher than a therapist when I would do therapy. And my husband got transferred to Louisiana in the late 79 when we went to Louisiana, and I got a job teaching at the university in Thibodeau, and self-esteem was part of the program. Well, that changed my life. I brought it back, and for 25 years I taught workshops on building self-esteem, which you'll see that's a part of the book too. I was a therapist. I still have a couple of clients. I don't do it actively. I'm mainly an artist now, so I spend my free time with art. And I'm very involved with my grandkids. I'm very involved with my family and friends and lots of good things.
When did you write the book? I didn't pay attention to that.
Actually, I started it less than a year ago, and I had not written a book in 10 years. And in the foreword, which I wrote myself, a friend of mine said, well, why don't you write it yourself? Because she didn't want to write it. And it was where I heard this little voice in the middle of the night, it's time to write another book. And so, hey, I did.
Wow. When did it get published? Like, when did you start selling it and stuff? I'm just curious how new it is.
On Amazon, yeah.
Okay, so this is January. So what, 4 or 5 months ago, right?
Yes.
Oh, good. That's great. I love that. So is there anything else about your introduction that you want to share, or are you complete?
Well, I've had a lot of challenges in life, and the way I approach those challenges is my motivation for writing the book. In other words, I don't like being a victim. I liked being activated, and I've I share so many things that I do when something happens on my path that I don't like, and I share a lot of things that have happened to me to illustrate how other people can do the same kind of inner work, which is a key to the book, working on your inner self.
As I told you before we hit the record button, as I read through the book, I was constantly saying, yes, 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 like throughout the whole book. And I was showing you how much I have been highlighting this book, like from the first page, through to the end. And I felt like connected to you, from how authentic you were in your book and sharing. And I think it's for anyone who is maybe struggling with any kind of a challenge. I think the book could be, just what you said. You share your tools that you've learned over the years
Yeah.
of how to manage life, like anything that comes your way,
Right.
right? You had like a tool and you're sharing it in the book, right?
Yes. Anytime I figure something out that helps me, I just can't help myself. I've got to tell other people. And of course, a lot of people don't want to hear about it. So,
Oh my
right.
God, call me because we are kindred souls in that way. Like I'm constantly sharing and people are like, I didn't ask, and I got to learn how to tamper that. I'm like, yes, but you need to know, you don't have to be a victim. You can thrive.
Yes.
And so when you said that, it's so true. Like I'm not going to go into the trauma, but I had a trauma very early on in my life, like at 22, years old. And when I went to the support group of the type of trauma that it was, I was like, I couldn't relate because they were called survivors. And I was like, I don't want to survive. I want to thrive in my
Yes.
life. I don't
Yes.
want to just be a survivor. That feels too passive.
Yes. Yes.
I don't want to be a victim of the circumstances. I want to overcome the circumstances, and that's what it sounds like when you said, I don't like being a victim of circumstances, right?
Yes. Yes. Because there's so many things I've done that took me out of there. And if I'm a victim, it's short term. You know, poor me is just a little while because I mean, we all do that even when we're more aware.
Yeah, that's great. So I haven't heard that before, but you're just saying that when you do come from victim mentality, it's temporary, is what you're saying.
Yeah, for me.
Yeah.
And that's and that's the
But
whole teaching.
which is not necessarily true for everyone, right? It's interesting because the more you work on your own, because I say in one of my other podcasts, which I'm totally having you on, I say when we heal ourselves, we heal the world. And so all we got to do is focus on our own healing journey, and then the whole world will elevate to another higher level and frequency. And when you do that, you give other people permission. When you work on yourself, you give other people permission to do it for themselves. And then you can be, a support, in that way. So definitely sound like a kindred soul. So is there anything else about, we'll get into the topics of the books. Do you want to tell them right now, kind of like, anything specific about your journey that is kind of a cornerstone to this book? Like, or are you finished introducing yourself?
Oh, I could say that self-esteem has been a theme on what I've needed to learn, and I had to teach it for 25 years to get
To
it.
learn it. Yes, that's funny. So
And
when you were a child though, did you suffer from any sense of that you weren't, like the other kids, or whatever mentality people have when they have low self-esteem?
uh, yeah, but I had a very creative mother, and I was very lucky that creativity was a big part of my childhood. And um, I do have a friendly personality, but it wasn't until I taught the class at Nicholls State University when I was like 30 years old that I even knew what self-esteem was and how challenging it is when you turn your power over to people outside yourself, where you get your okayness on whether people have words of affirmation. If people don't love themselves, they're certainly not going to be loving to me. I didn't understand, like when my mother would get angry, that it wasn't my fault. In other words, I didn't understand the internal locus of control versus an external locus of control.
Yeah.
When I started learning that, and then it took me 25 years to get it, um, I bounced back to that internal okayness and love myself from within. And so that's like a big journey that I personally have been on.
Yeah. I get it. My personal experience is that I was the youngest of four girls, and so we kind of had a father who kind of thought that he was there for us to, you know, um, be we're there to serve him instead of like he's there to kind of raise us, and like he definitely didn't feel responsible for teaching us inner, but that's because he didn't have it. He didn't have that inner understanding, but he was a good provider and he came home every night, and so he had his qualities that were good. But I did learn how to try to please him
Yeah.
and make him happy, and therefore I carried that into being a people pleaser. But I will say that even though I was a people pleaser, I definitely was also had kind of an odd sense of confidence. And I say odd because like I really feel like I got my confidence in like 8th grade. And then that just kind of carried me through to the rest of my life. So it's a good time of year. I mean, it's a good time of life, to get it at
Yeah.
8th grade at 13,
Yeah.
years old. But it's interesting because when you are confident in your life, growing through those years where people are feeling their less confidence, you're like you walk around this earth and you're intimidating because people are not having their own sense of self. And so I ended up being offensive a lot of times just because I was standing for myself or choosing me, over the being the nice, the nice answer or whatever, you know what I mean? So
Yes.
I had to learn, like I dated a few narcissists in the process and had to learn how to, not be the giver and the let them meet me halfway, you know?
Yes.
So anyway, so everybody goes on their own journey,
Right.
to go through this life. And you talk about that. In fact, there's are we ready to dive into the book?
Yeah, let's do it.
Which I keep referring to. So I'm gonna point out a few things. Just in the book because I want people to understand like what you said, so like here you said for the book you said my intention is to inspire people seeking help to better meet their challenges. I share healing practices and have helped me find inner peace rather than suffering. Right? Isn't that beautiful? I love that.
Thank you.
And I'm going to read this other part and then we can talk about it. So it says the theme of this book is to meet unexpected challenges head on as a means to grow and evolve spiritually. Challenges have hidden gifts when we allow them to further wake us up. As it becomes habit to examine your life, you will expand your horizons and find how good it feels to be an aware, authentic, healthy, creative human being. Your rich inner life sustains you when unwanted surprises land on your path. May you find love, joy, and deep peace as you read the book and examine yourself. And then it says, love and blessings, Suzanne. So this is the beginning, and this is where you set the stage for what's to come in the book, right?
I did. And it isn't where I'm giving advice I'm just sharing what I do when a crisis comes.
And you have great advice. Even though it's not advice, it's great advice.
Yeah.
So, anything about what I just read, does anything pop up into mind that you want to like expand on about that, or like, from those intentions or anything?
Well, I think being authentic is a journey where you feel safe being yourself. And you, again, it's hard not to tie it into self-esteem and how you love yourself, because it's still, my knee-jerk reaction is to hide who I am and not shine like you do. My personality has kind of dimmed itself. And as I've grown in my ability to love myself, which really comes from God, you got to really connect to we are loved no matter what. And that helps me be more authentic, where I can just tough out if people are going to judge me or criticize me, because that's not what my life is about. I want to get the most out of it. And it, like being a therapist for 40 years, it's important to connect on a deep emotional level when you want to heal yourself. And what I would do with other people filled my need too, to be genuine and authentic. And it isn't where I would talk much about myself, but people can feel it. When you've worked on yourself, people can feel it, and they feel safe or not safe with you.
Yeah,
So that's a
absolutely.
little bit on my reaction.
Yeah, that's great. So in your, let's see, is this the first chapter? Oh, it's just the introduction, and you're talking about the examined life, which is kind of what you're mentioning now. So I'm just going to read this little passage here, and we could see if there's any opportunity to expand on that. So it says, whether you're new to self-discovery or seasoned traveler, we each have more to learn. And why not do it willingly, you ask? The examine life helps you get through challenging experiences and grow, finding inner peace instead of suffering. After a crisis, you have to go to spiral up or down. I encourage you to spiral up and grow your world larger, even if for a time your path went south. Spiraling upwards, I have found, moves me in the direction of an empowered, self-aware, inner directed, awakened, wholesome, authentic, joyful person. And I totally and fully agree. And then I highlighted, you must ask a trusted friend to help you by sharing what they see in you. So, one of the things I wanted to expand on that you just talked about is this concept of loving yourself. It's funny because I I have not only seen this in myself, I've seen it in others, but I've learned through I'm 55 years old. So I've learned through my life journey of the inner work and the inner awareness and the constant conversation with my personal evolution, that even that concept of loving yourself is on a continuum.
It is.
Like, I could say, 30 years ago, I'm putting my foot down and I'm not dating you anymore because I love myself. Like whatever your thinking is that your loving yourself action is, it can be. But there could be a zillion other things in my life that I wasn't loving myself over. So I have a hard time this is my own way of thinking. Like, I have a hard time saying, oh, I was really loving myself back then, because every decision that you make is a decision to love yourself, or maybe it's not loving yourself as an option. It's not an on and off switch. Oh, I love myself and it's full, complete, and whole, or I don't love myself and it's, an all or nothing. You know what I mean? Like, let's talk about that, the concept of loving yourself.
Yeah, I see it like an acorn having to crack open because the seed's inside and grow into a full tree. It's a continuum, and we never get there fully. And one thing I have in the book is a self-esteem inventory where you can get clues to some places where you have beliefs that are not supporting yourself, and gives you some data to work on. But you also can get feedback on how other people and your relationships and reactions are going, whether I react to somebody that's having a temper tantrum depends on how I'm handling myself. And so that acorn might not do it well all the time, but it wants to keep growing. And
Yeah.
I think as we learn how to support ourselves, then we'll do it in more situations. And we're all kind of unconscious in certain areas. And some people are, unconscious in relationships. Some people are unconscious in what their body has to say. And that's what this book's about, because I would say it's out there to work on relationships and know yourself through relationships. It's out there that addictions can tell you about yourself and you can learn, but it's really not as available to look at your body giving you feedback on where you're loving yourself or not loving yourself, how you practice self-care, what your beliefs are around self-care, so that loving yourself again, everything comes back to that foundation and watching that acorn just keep growing. And anytime we're stuck, picking up a book like this or talking to an aware friend kind of gets us growing again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that analogy of the acorn. I call it going into the mighty oak, because oaks are strong and they can withstand storms, and they live for hundreds of years and, thousands of years probably out there, but they're just so strong, right? So it's just a great analogy. I'm going to read this one little tiny sentence, and then let's dive into the concept of self care and the physical aspects of what you're talking about. Because,
Okay.
yes, when I read that about, I thought about my own life in my early 20s, is when the relationships were teaching me about myself. And I was watching my sisters' relationships with their partners and saying, I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want that. Like, so I was learning from the three sisters ahead of me about what I wanted, and then I would find somebody that then I decided I didn't want that either after finding the person. And then the addiction, I was addicted to cigarette smoking and nicotine. And that was like one of the hardest transformations for me to go through. But what you're saying is, looking at your body and how your body represents and is talking to you, it's taken me a long time, and I've had little snippets in my life where I have actually put my body as a priority, and I had some successful, but overall, that's the area of my life that I've always resisted, because I like freedom and I like options to choose what I want, even in spite of the consequences that may come from that. And so clearly it somehow served me in my life, but now I'm ready for transformation and change. And that's what this channel was created for 18 months ago, was to put me on a wellness focused journey. And so I'm interviewing people like you and doctors and Ayurvedic specialists, and just having that whole conversation, and looking for transformation to put the time and energy into what's needed right now in my life, which is this focus and the physical. So I love this book. So let me just read this one thing that you wrote, and then we'll move into the physical part. So to wrap up the whole, journey of living authentically and spiritual awakening, it says, A spiritual awakening refers to expanding awareness of consciousness to experience something greater than an ordinary life. Who wants an ordinary life? Not me. So that I love that, and it just defines how I've made decisions over the last 25 years, or 30 years really at this point, since I did have that trauma. And that trauma experience is what woke me up to looking for an extraordinary life instead of an ordinary life. And so I've been on an extraordinary life journey, and it takes a while. You don't get there, but boy, have I loved the journey. Even the bad stuff that happened and the challenges that happen have all been important threads in my tapestry of my life.
Yeah. And when you're in the midst of a crisis or a diagnosis or a death, you might not be able to do that immediately. So
Correct.
you can get to that expansion of awareness after you deal with the experience emotionally and go through the grieving process and get to the place of acceptance so that you can actually grow from it. Because a lot of people say, well, there's nothing good about this. I don't see any lessons. And it's like they're still grieving. They're still coming to terms that this is a reality today. And so, anyways,
Yeah. And one of the things that, from what you're saying, I think about just from my own journey is that until you grow through it, if you don't take the time and the energy to dedicate to that growth opportunity, then you may not ever see the other side that we're talking about,
right.
but it's going through, Alanis Morissette has a song, it's better to go through it, to get to the other side than the other sides of however you could get through something. The faster, the more that you go through it, the faster you're in, the better is her lyric. And so I think about that, like just dive in, get it over with, go through it, and you'll be faster onto the better by going through it and dealing with it, right?
Right.
Okay. So just one little thing, and then we're going to dive into this can't be happening to me. So it says, again, this is the last sentence of your, is this the wake up? Is this the forward I'm reading or the chapter one? I don't know. I don't know where I'm in, but it says, a theme of this book is, and this is important. That's why I want to read it. A theme of this book is to stop resisting challenges and seek ways to make breakthroughs in understanding, healing, and living your life. As you grow more comfortable with the awakening process, you will discover the unusual becomes normal, right?
Yes. Yes.
Beautiful. I love it. And you're right. I love so many aspects of your book. And I just have to tell you that you don't know how unique this is. I really rarely ever like read someone's book before I interview them. Usually I'm just kind of getting them to talk about their book so we can get inspired to want to read it. But the fact that I've read this beforehand, it's just perfect. It's a perfect experience for me. And I'm so grateful that you wrote it. So the next chapter, and by the way, we're not going chapter by chapter. This is already 28 minutes in. I'm not going to read everything. I just wanted to give y'all like the foundation for the beginnings of what she's creating in her book so that you're inspired. I think everybody should have this because it's just such a, gosh, it's just such a holistic book for anyone who may be challenged in their life. I really feel that way. And we'll go into the part about where you found out what was happening to you and like how you handled it. Do you want to tell that story a little bit in the podcast?
Well, I think you're talking about the breast cancer
Yeah, it says chapter 2, this can't be happening to me. Now what? So you're
Yeah.
telling the story in that chapter of what happened to you.
Yeah. That was quite a shock to me. And even though I saw myself as self aware, and continually working on improving my awareness, uh, that threw me. And that experience, I needed to sit in nature. I needed just a very few people to be with me, like my family were very loving and supportive. But I needed to go inward. I needed to just ponder, like, how could this happen to me? How could I not know this was happening? And eventually, I got to the place where I could do all the things I like to do. We delve into the metaphor of breast cancer. Well, it deals with mothering. It deals, they say, the left side of the body deals with the yin or the female or the receptive side of the body. And since it was the left breast, it was about mothering and how I was mothered and how I mothered. And I delved into what was at that time just a story my mother had told me that, when I was like a day old, she was breastfeeding me in the hospital and I turned blue. And then she started screaming. All the other women started screaming. They whisked me away and they zapped my thymus gland with radiation because it had expanded. And that was just a story, but it was no longer just a story. So I spent time in meditation. I spent time imagining what it was like being my mother, what it would be a newborn with that much fear and anxiety. And then when my mother did not breastfeed me after that experience, and again, there's so much about, bonding with your mother and the attachment and, how that plays out later in life. So the emotional aspects of having a diagnosis was my major focus. I did lots of physical things. I mean, I am an explorer, so you name it. If
You were moving a lot.
yes, and journal writing, so important. Your inner self benefits from getting out. And I would say writing by hand, sitting in nature is a much deeper experience than sitting at a computer typing your experience.
Right.
And
Let me ask you, how old were you when this diagnosis happened, when you got the diagnosis?
I was in my 60s,
Okay.
60.
Yeah, so your kids were already raised.
I'm 76 now, so subtract. So mid 60s.
Okay, okay. I was just curious because people who are listening, and they're older and they get some crisis diagnosis, like I want there to be hope. I want a story of hope around that and that you can be a beacon of hope for them. It's okay. We have things happen.
Yeah. I mean,
So having pets around your life is really beneficial.
yeah, I thought I had a bark collar on her, and I do, but the mail is being delivered right now in the mail slot.
You just reminded me. Normally, I take my dog's collar off because when she stands up and shakes her head, and she's down here underneath the desk over on the side, and I was like, "Oh no, I didn't take her dog collar off." So we might hear a clang, clang, clang in a little
Okay.
bit. So
Okay.
no, it's all good. So yeah, so I just want you to be. I want people who might hear this who are going through a challenging experience, and I actually know someone who is to have hope and to know that there is life after diagnosis, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So I wrote here big. I'm not even sure if you use the word in your book way shower, but that's a term I use because I like to be an example
Mhm.
for the way. I mean, I know for sure you said the wounded healer, right? You talked about that and you talked about Louise Hay and the other woman I didn't know about, but I have read the book You Can Heal Your Life. So you benefited from kind of going into
Yes,
those
yes.
dialogues?
Yeah, the symbology of what other um, intuitive people have said about different parts of the body um, would get my intuition started. And I had, life to me is a spiral where you keep growing in awareness. And I would circle back and have to re examine, but at a new level. And I would understand different things intuitively that maybe I didn't, a year ago or whenever. And so I always start with some of the teachers, and I put two of them in my book that have information on what the symbol is of different parts of the body. Like we all say, you know, he's a pain in the neck, or, we're joined at the hip. And those kind of metaphors we use all the time. And, but there's metaphors for the whole body. And whether it's on the right side or the left side, to finish that earlier conversation, the right side's your yang, your doing, your male side, your action side. And so it would be, if it were the right breast, it'd be more to do with relationships. Um, and so, anyways,
No,
uh,
that's beautiful. So you understood you were a becoming a wounded healer too, right? Is that where you came to understand
yeah,
about that?
yes, because
Why?
I, like you, I would have thought, for 65 years that my main teacher was my husband. And I became aware more and more and more of myself by having to improve my experience of the relationship. And, um, but then when the health challenge comes, to go, oh my gosh, this is a whole area that I really don't pay that much attention to.
And there's a part of me that's feeling intuited that you would have probably never written this book if it hadn't have been for
Right,
this cancer diagnosis, right? And this book
right.
is needed. Like it's so needed by people. It's just I find it a book of hope, a book of hope and possibility. How would you call it?
Um, just like, what do I do now? It's like helping people
It's a
have
guide
more
it's a guidebook.
relationships. Yeah.
The I mean, it's a good guidebook. Okay, so you go into I circled here oneness, which is funny because I have a podcast called Oneness Junkie. So this obviously resonated with me too. I'm going to read what you said on this page 16. It says, foremost is feeling disconnected and alone from others. Life, your divine presence in God, comfort and trust result from having a connection with a higher power. If you feel separate, alone, and disconnected spiritually, it is important to start your own exploration to find and experience this oneness. And that was one of the reasons that I set up the podcast Oneness Junkie, was to help people know that we're all connected and that there's a bigger activation happening in this world and you can be a part of it. And even if you're unconscious about your connection to it, you already are a part of it and connected to it. You just may not be aware of it, right?
We all breathe the same oxygen, right?
Yeah.
I
And I
mean,
like to say that we have more things in common being part of the human race than we do as our separateness in the cultures and the diversity of our where we were raised or how we were
mhm.
what land we grew up in, like whether it was India or Africa or United States. And so when we focus more on our commonalities, there's a lot more that we have of likeness
Yes.
than different. So, school of life here, you're talking about authenticity, you're talking about the dark night of the soul, a perspective on suffering. What do you want to say about suffering?
I want to say that we all suffer, and that um, my conditioning was there wasn't much you could do about it except complain and, and criticize other people. And
That's funny because that's kind of how our role models, right? Those were our role models taught us that.
that's what I was taught. Yes.
Right. So we had to find a new way, right?
Yes. And I just happen to be a very curious person, and I don't take the surface. There's got to be more than this to understand life. And I don't know.
Well, you said here, I'll read something you wrote about suffering. Is, let's see, you wrote, "Can pain and suffering have a purpose?" And you found that out, right?
Yes, it did. I did. And um, it continues today, where I want to know what my body is telling me with any symptom. And as I age and have joints that don't work like they used to, I want to talk to my body differently. I don't want to criticize my body. I want to appreciate it's doing the best that it can. I want to catch myself saying, well, I used to be able to X, Y, and Z, and now I have to back off. And you're doing a good job. And talk to the body like, my shoulder's having a rough time. Let's pitch in and work together to help heal that shoulder. And so it's very important to me, and it's helped me raise my level of comfort in my body by listening and talking to my body differently. And
Yes. And you wrote, oh, go ahead.
well, I was
Sorry.
just going to say, it influences the amount of self-care. Like I had dental work, this week. They had to take.
Ew, I hate dental work.
I know they took out an implant in my mouth
Ouch.
that failed, and so instead of going to my exercise class for a couple of days, I backed off. Well, my younger self would have gone anyway.
Push through.
Yeah, I don't want to do that to my body anymore.
Yeah.
And so I tune in, and so by setting a boundary is taking care of myself. And
Yeah. And then you got to ask yourself, what was your younger self trying to prove to yourself by pushing you through to that feeling that you needed to be not slacking or not lazy? What's that message? Where was the driver in that?
right. And that little voice that told me to exercise and push through is not my wise voice. My wise voice, which I've learned through the years, might be telling me something I don't want to listen to. But that's where I have to sit with it. I'm a big nature fan. Go for a walk, look at the sky, look at the clouds, deep breathe outside. Then I can start calming myself to listen to the messages.
Yeah, it's so important. I'm reading a book right now with my community called Cellular Wellness by Bill Rawls. And last night, just on chapter 2, I think I'm on, he said that, the cells are, listening, and they're telling you, like, every symptom you have is a communication. I mean, I already know this, but it's nice to read it again, to be reminded. And that's exactly what you're saying, is that every symptom you have, if you're tired or if you feel like a headache, or like, just ask yourself, like, well, why is this body part talking like this headache I have? What did I just eat? Or do I need more water? Like, you got to ask yourself,
Right.
do I have stress in my life? What was the conversation I just had and hung up the phone from? So, um, anything about that? I was going to read to you about the deepening your relationship with your body and get us talking a little bit about this, about how your body's your teacher.
Yeah, go ahead.
So it says, this is like the first paragraph. The body is a storehouse of information that can help you grow and heal and evolve. It is a recording of the history of your past activities, experiences, beliefs, attitudes, emotions, and patterns, which include all that were handed to you through genetic and spiritual lineage. Isn't that fascinating? Let's in a second talk about that, but let me just read here. You said, consider your body as your teacher, giving you messages when it has pain, illness, and disease. When body problems are understood from a deeper perspective, we can learn to crack the code of what these issues mean and make positive choices for well being. We can reduce the amount of discomfort we experience when we heed the body's messages. Isn't that so true?
Yes. There's too much to say about that, but
Well, actually, people don't know what you and I know about the biology of belief. Let's just shock everyone and tell them what happens in the utero. Like, you bring stuff with you. You want to talk? Oh, tell them about the seven ancestor lineage.
yeah, well, it's when you work on healing yourself, you're also healing 7 generations behind you and 7 generations in front of you.
Wow.
It's like I may have taken on breast cancer genetically from a great great grandmother that lived in a society where you had to be subservient. You couldn't be uh, taken care of because there wasn't enough to eat or whatever it was.
Survival, because they were
Yes,
busy surviving.
yes. And there would be no time to practice self care and um, who knows,
you,
early
you
death.
you didn't walk for nature because you were walking for food.
Exactly. Yes, there was no free time to heal. And I'm clearing the emotional uh, blockages that people have had in my lineage, and it's been handed on until somebody would work on it. And so uh, I definitely took on the piece on loving myself, and I definitely took on the piece about um, breast cancer and mothering, and um, forgiving when mothering wasn't uh, done well, forgiving myself when I didn't mother well. So, all that stuff, there was no time 3 generations past. And as I clear myself now, my daughters and grandkids get it, and my unborn great grandkids will get a clearer genetic, emotional, physical experience.
Yeah, like a blueprint almost.
Yes. And so there's so many things that get stuck in the body, and lots of aches and pains are trapped emotions. And these trapped emotions can come out through meditation, massage, journal writing, going to healers, praying, meditating. There's lots of ways to get trapped emotions out. And I did a lot of that, explained a lot of that in the book on what I did and currently do to keep my body from holding on to stuff.
How to continue to release it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to go to a chiropractor who taught me, this is, when I was like 33 years old. I learned that there's issues stored in the tissues, and that always stuck with me, and so by getting the chiropractic adjustments, it would release subluxations in the body, which are energy blockages, and that would then reveal information to my body, and then it would come into my mind, and I would have awarenesses and understanding, and oh, I didn't know that was a problem still, and just information would come to you in ways which you say right here. We're at the same spot that you're talking about, where you talk about this sentence where you say, you know, uh, intuition and inner rapport are developed over time during quiet moments spent pondering your issues, journaling, meditation, prayer, and talking with your body. And then you say the language is about receiving insights from your body, inner healer, higher self, and spiritual healers. And this is the part I want to focus on for this podcast purposes. It says, everybody listen, information may come in many ways: dreams, daydreaming, words of wisdom from another, chance encounters, sermons, lectures, YouTube talks, book passages, TV shows, and I'm going to add podcast, or she says shows that catch your attention and speak to you. And then I put in yellow highlighter I added on here to update this. It says AI, which is artificial intelligence, will serve them to you as well, because AI is able to know what you're texting about. They know what you're searching for on the internet. And then when you go on a YouTube channel, that technology is feeding you information of things that are already in your dialogue and your mindset. So if this podcast showed up for you, or on the YouTube channel, this video has shown up for you, receive it as a blessing and receive it as a passage and a message that was helpful for your conscious awareness to hear about and learn about. And y'all, everyone listening, can add to it. Y'all can write in or comment below your contribution of how you what you know and what you've learned, through your life journey, because everybody's on a different continuum of the path, right? So we all still have things to learn as well, right?
And share.
And share. Yes. And the more we share, the more we will help raise the vibration of the planet. So I'm going to, anything about that you want to comment on or refer to, Suzanne? Anything about that section?
No, I'm good.
Well, we're speaking your words anyway, right? You don't want to be repeating the same thing. So let me just we're pretty much close to the end of this book. It's like catch yourself enjoying the moment. Then you go into chapter 7. You want people to experience the joy and the happiness and the lovely aspects of life. I do want people to know that, and you can tell this yourself, that of how you chose to heal yourself, because what's your prognosis now? Like, are you cancer free?
Um, I am on an estrogen blocker, which blocks cancer in my body.
Okay, so right, because it's not creating the cancer to eat off of that. So because nobody knows, we didn't talk about it, but will you kind of just in a little bitty snippet tell them that journey? Okay, so you were like, here's where I'm guiding you. You were diagnosed and you went traditional, but then tell us what happened after that. Okay, so people can know.
I went non-traditional before, and I'm fairly non-traditional and don't necessarily. I wasn't happy with different experiences in my life with the medical community, so I learned to not 100% turn my power over to an authority outside myself. And something has to feel right to me before I can agree to it. And, somehow I wasn't afraid I was going to die. I mean, I was temporarily, and, I can examine pieces of that can still come up. But I didn't feel like I had to take the advice that was given me. And so I explored lots of alternative things. And I eventually realized I had to make peace with the medical community and use their methods, which, it's all God, but I had a bias from my earlier experiences. And so then I got involved with the medical, and I pretty much live my life as if I don't have a problem.
Yeah. That's awesome
Yeah.
because you don't.
Yeah. And it's kind of like my husband said, well, we made it to old age, so what's the problem?
That's funny that you said that because on my channel, I talk about being 55 and how the concept of aging doesn't bother me. I tell everybody, like, I am celebrating that I made it to senior citizen status. Like, I can't believe I made it this far. So it's more of a celebration than it is a resistance to
Yes.
having achieved old age, so to speak.
And,
Senior.
and those of us that live a long time, we're in for the whole experience, positive and negative. And how, you can't tell a young person what it's like when your joints are not the same as they were when you were young. And experiencing that, it just makes you more aware, wiser, more compassionate, kinder.
Yeah.
And
It slows you down and you have to kind of go more
yeah,
inward than focusing so much
yeah,
on
I can spend
distraction.
an hour drinking my coffee in the morning. I don't have to get up and hurry unless it's 100 degrees and I'm going to walk early before it gets too hot.
That's funny. Or you have a podcast scheduled and you got to get back and get ready for it.
Yeah, you're right. I have to go wash my hair again.
That's awesome. Is there anything about wrapping up? You've got questionnaires in the back. Here's a questions for self-discovery. I'm just letting the audience know how exciting this book is. Journal questions for self-discovery. I mean, we get the full gamut of are you an LPC? Is that
Yeah,
what you are? Okay, licensed professional counselor. We get all that exciting in the book, but you have a lot of downloadable tools that you
yes,
give away
yes.
for free.
I've written 10 books, and 9 of them, or 11 books. My first book is I don't sell that anymore. And, I look at it now and I go, oh, I just really couldn't write back in those days. But anyways,
So everybody starts somewhere. Is that what you're saying?
yeah. And so I have 9 books that you can download for free on my website. And my website is very rich. I've got self-aware articles that myself and other people have been writing for 20 years. And you can still sign up for the newsletter. I'm not very reliable on when they come out anymore.
I call that free will. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Like you talked a minute ago about cell healing and communicating. Well, one of my favorite YouTube people has cell healing meditations, and like a couple newsletters ago, that was his link was in there because I want people to know about things that I discover, and then people that are attracted to it will listen to it.
Absolutely.
And so, anyways, my website's very rich with lots of information for people that are open.
And they're ready. They're ready and they're interested. You've got great tools. Why don't you tell them what your website is?
It's innerworkspublishing.com. INNERWORKS.com.
Beautiful. And are you on any other I know you just told me earlier that you hadn't really done much on your YouTube channel, but are you on any other social? Like, do you have a Facebook, like a business or a
No,
public?
I'm not good at that. My generation doesn't know how to do that.
You know what you're really good at is writing 10 books. I
Yeah,
don't
that's my
yeah, I
see.
mean, if I got one out of me, it would be a big deal. I was telling someone that, I've always felt like there's a book inside of me, but I haven't been ready to write it. And I'm with my channel and where it's going with this podcasting and YouTube channel in the last, 2.5 years, I feel more ready because it's like everything's kind of forming together and compartmentalizing as if in chapters and awareness. But I think that when you know that the book is ready to be birthed, you write it, right? Is that how it is for you're
Exactly.
the expert?
Yeah, I couldn't not write last year. And, I wrote it probably in 3 or 4 months because once it's coming through you. But I do want to say this is a short book. People that don't like to read, it's a short book.
Thank you. Yes, me. I'm not that much of a reader, as I said earlier. And let's see, I'm going to tell you how many pages it is. Literally 62, I think. Hold on, to the end of the final chapter. Yeah, chapter 7 ends at page 62. And then the rest of these pages, look at all that. That is all tools and questionnaires and epilogue and appendixes and journaling and all the neat little resources that she's gifting to you all through this little book. And it's not even that expensive. I think on Amazon, it's like how much is it? Like $16?
$14.95.
Okay, yeah.
Or $3 for the Kindle book
Oh, no, we want everybody, this is a book you need
to
in this
underline.
form because you're going to refer back to it. So we were talking before we hit record and I was telling her that um this is such an important episode of podcast because even though you may not have a diagnosis or a trauma or anything that's stressful in your life right now, I want you to remember this because when and if, and hopefully blessed that you don't have any of that happening to you, but life tends to kind of show up for us when it's time for us to move through something. Remember this book. When it happens, remember the book. Wake up. Your body is telling you something, how to grow and evolve from health challenges and life altering circumstances. So I just want to make a point to the life altering circumstances is anything. It's relationships, it's addiction, it's, just depression. If you're just depressed and you don't understand why, you're depressed. That's a life altering circumstance, right?
Right. And I use the word dis-ease instead of disease because you can have dis-ease physically, emotionally, mentally, or spiritually. And so it hits all those levels.
Yeah, that's a great ending to our episode. I want to thank you, Suzanne, for your time today and just appreciate who you are in the world. And good Lord, you have 9 books. Maybe you'll come back and talk about a few of them.
Yeah.
Are they all on Amazon?
No, but one of the most fun books is called Enlightening Cinderella. And she's married 10 years and she's miserable. And the fairy godmother comes back and teaches her about self awareness and relationships and all kinds of good stuff. And then it has 2 endings.
I bet that book could preserve a lot of marriages because I think a lot of times when you go through that, you're unhappy in your marriage. A lot of times, if you can just get yourself happy, then it can transmute and transform a bad marriage, right?
Yes. And I also have another relationship book called The Harrill Solution. And I forget what the subtitle is, but uh, that one, I didn't pick the title, but it had a publisher. And I wanted to call it Becoming the Person You Always Wanted to Marry. And it's all about you use relationships to become more aware. And that's how you improve relationships by changing yourself. So
I
Those two
agree.
books, those are two of my favorites.
Great. Well, I look forward to seeing if you enjoyed yourself on this
Yes.
podcast. Then we will have to have you back for some lively other discussions where you can help us learn through our life altering circumstances.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for showing up today and being your wonderful self. So we'll say goodbye to the audience. You can hang in there, Suzanne. You don't have to jump off, but we're going to say goodbye to our audience.
Okay.
And we'll be uploading this later on this afternoon to YouTube. So y'all keep tuning in and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you all. We'll see you soon. Bye bye.
Bye.
We've reached the end of this episode. If you'd like to continue with this motivational journey, be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you won't miss out each time we load a new episode. If you have an inspirational story to share or want to let us know about a potential guest, we'd love to hear about it. Contact us at avantiwellness.com. See you next time, and remember, change is good.